I stayed silent after she humiliated me at a dinner party, then executed a silent exit using digital history, precision planning, and cold revenge. It was supposed to be a quiet dinner for couples midweek. Nothing fancy. Pot roast, Pinot Noir, polite laughter about taxes, weekend plans, and whose kid was failing math. That kind of night. The kind where you blend into middle age and forget that silence can still slice like a scalpel. Then she said it. Amanda had just refilled her glass, her third, and leaned back in her chair, her gold bracelet tapping against the stem as she laughed too loudly at someone's joke. Not mine, of course. God forbid. She was in full performance mode now, like she got a dopamine hit from being the loudest woman in the room. My ex, she said, grinning as her voice danced over the rim of her glass, was bigger in every way. It was the kind of line that was supposed to come with a wink and a nudge, like you were supposed to laugh with her. But there was no wink, just silence. That kind of sharp, sudden silence that feels like the room has lost oxygen. Her friend Julie coughed awkwardly into her napkin. Dave glanced down at his plate like it owed him an explanation. The guy next to me, Peter, made this half smile that said, "I'm not involved," and stared off toward the kitchen like he hoped the walls would absorb him. And me? I didn't blink. I didn't look up, just stared at the roast beef like it was the only thing holding me to the earth. I'd seen the warning signs for years. The petty digs, the backhanded compliments, the slow erosion of mutual respect that comes when one person starts believing the other is just convenient, like a dishwasher that never breaks, so you forget it even hums. Amanda had been losing interest for a long time. I just didn't know she was ready to humiliate me for sport. The part that stuck with me wasn't the insult. It was her smirk after, the way she sipped her wine and tilted her head like she dropped a clever line in a stand-up set. She looked proud, like I was the punchline in a joke she'd been rehearsing. My fingers tightened around the fork. 1 second, 2. Then I did what no one expected. I set the fork down neatly, right beside the knife, parallel to the plate. I dabbed my lips with the napkin, folded it once carefully and laid it across the edge of the table. Then I stood. The chair scraped back with that wooden groan that always sounds louder than it is. Amanda glanced up mid-sip, half smiling, expecting me to maybe roll my eyes or mutter something sarcastic, but I didn't say a word. Didn't give her the dignity of acknowledgement. I walked out past the wine rack, past the friends whose mouths were frozen somewhere between pity and shock, past the little vase Amanda had bought from that overpriced boutique, the one she said made the dining room feel more European, out the front door into the cool night. And as the door clicked shut behind me, something settled in my chest. Not anger, not shame. Something colder, cleaner, a decision. She thought it was a joke. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been preparing for that moment for years. Quietly, precisely. The way a surgeon prepares for an operation he hopes he'll never have to perform. It wasn't about the size comparison. It wasn't even about the disrespect. It was about the fact that she looked me in the eye in front of people who watched us raise kids and host barbecues and tried to make me small. And I don't do small, I do silent. Silent and strategic. By the time her laughter faded behind that door, I was already unlocking the safety deposit box I'd opened 6 months ago. Because when a woman throws a match on your dignity just to watch it burn, you don't run to put the fire out. You wait for the wind and make sure she's standing in the ashes. Amanda came home humming, still tipsy, still glowing from the attention. Julie had laughed. Dave had blushed. Even Peter gave her that half sneer of amusement. She thought it landed. The joke, she really did. She imagined Owen sulking upstairs, probably nursing his wounded pride with ESPN and his usual scotch. He always sulked. That's what men like Owen did. They didn't leave. She pushed open the door, kicked off her heels like she always did. Left one flipped under the hallway bench, the other pointed toward the stairs. The house was still, but the lights were on. Too quiet. Not the peen wine kind of quiet either. It was sterile, like the house had exhaled something. "Owen," she called out, dumping her purse on the kitchen counter. No answer. She tossed her keys toward the bowl. Missed. They skidded across the floor. She rolled her eyes and walked toward the stairs, not worried yet. Maybe he went to bed early. Maybe he was being dramatic. She'd give him 10 minutes and a glass of wine before offering one of her pseudo-apologies. The kind where she wraps her arms around him and says, I'm just playing, right? But as she climbed the stairs, something shifted. There was a drawer pulled open in the hallway, just slightly. A drawer Owen never left open. In their marriage, that man could leave wounds but not clutter. She stepped into the bedroom and froze. The closet was cracked open, his side half empty, 3 suits missing. The navy duffel bag gone, The tan leather belt that always hung on the door, nowhere. She blinked. Her heart thudded once, then again, harder. She walked to the closet, pulled the door fully open. His shoes were gone. His watch box was open and 3 watches were missing. She backed up slowly, like stepping out of a memory she didn't want to claim. Her phone was already in her hand. "Owen, what is this?" No response. She walked down the hall to his office. The desk drawers were cleaned out. The folders she always teased him about. "Your apocalypse files," she'd joke. Gone. His laptop was missing. Only the printer remained, blinking red for no paper. She dialed. It rang once, then straight to voicemail. She tried again, straight to voicemail. A tremor of something unfamiliar started to ripple through her chest. Not guilt. No, not yet. Just imbalance. As if the rules had changed and she'd missed the memo. She returned downstairs, fingers tight around her phone. Still no answer. She looked around for any sign of where he might have gone, maybe a note on the counter. Nothing. Then she saw it, taped to the fridge, a white envelope, no name, no decoration, just flat and square and waiting. She opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper. One line typed, "Don't worry, you'll hear from me soon." No signature, no affection, just those words, sterile and surgical. Amanda stood there barefoot on cold tile, wine-stained from the night, smugness slowly draining from her skin. Her fingers curled around the note like she could squeeze more meaning from it. She should have felt angry, righteous, but she didn't. She felt watched, like something had been moving beneath her for longer than she realized. A quiet undercurrent of calculation. She walked into the living room and sank into the couch. The joke had landed, sure, but something else had too. Not a consequence. Not yet. Just a prelude, a signal. The door didn't slam when he left. It didn't creak or groan. But now, standing in her own home, Amanda finally realized it wasn't a door anymore. It was a seal. And Owen, he wasn't on the other side. The knock came at 8:14 a.m. Amanda was still in her robe, hair tied up messily, mascara smeared from the night before. The bitter aftertaste of red wine clinging to her mouth like regret. She hadn't slept much. The note on the fridge kept replaying in her head, echoing louder the quieter the house got. "Don't worry, you'll hear from me soon." Well, apparently, soon was now. She shuffled to the door barefoot, rubbing her temple. Through the frosted glass, she saw a man in a gray windbreaker holding a slim envelope and a small tablet. Delivery for Amanda Cross. Her mouth opened before her brain caught up. Yeah. He handed her the envelope and tapped the screen. "Signature here, please." She scrawled something that looked vaguely like her name and closed the door before he could turn around. The envelope wasn't thick, but it had weight. Her name typed on the front in cold, centered font. No return address, just a firm logo in the corner, one she didn't recognize. She peeled it open slowly, some part of her still hoping it was a misunderstanding, a warning, a bluff. Inside were 2 documents, one formal, one terrifying. Document 1, Notice of Intent to Initiate Separation Proceedings, filed at 6:02 a.m. Owen's name at the top, her name directly beneath it. A bullet point list under immediate actions, formal separation request filed, joint property to be frozen, pending review, shared financials to be audited, disclosures requested by both parties, temporary power of attorney established, Owen Cross, primary. Amanda blinked, read it again. Her stomach tightened, her heart knocked once, loud and disoriented. But it was the second page that did the real damage, the letter from Owen's lawyer. Polite, professional, brutal. "Dear Mrs. Cross, this correspondence serves to inform you of the legal and procedural steps being taken on behalf of Mr. Owen Cross, effective immediately. As part of our standard review process, we've completed a preliminary assessment of your shared property and digital history. We welcome transparency and cooperative resolution. For reference, please note, we already reviewed her digital history. Cordially, Dana Whitlock Esquire, Whitlock Finch and Gray LLP." She read that line again and again and again. We already reviewed her digital history. Her throat went dry. She stared at the phrase like it had teeth. No accusation, no elaboration, just a quiet confirmation, the digital equivalent of a loaded chamber. Her hands began to sweat. She moved to the kitchen counter and slowly sat down. The documents in her lap, trembling now. A glass of water, half full, sat by the sink. She reached for it and spilled it. Digital history. He knew. She didn't even need to check. Didn't need to scroll through the WhatsApp threads or the burner Gmail she thought she'd been clever about. She knew what was in there. A flirtation with an old boyfriend that got too real. Screenshots she swore she deleted. Demo payments labeled spa that weren't spa. The late-night hotel receipt she thought she could write off on her corporate card and hide in plain sight. How long had he known? And worse, how long had he waited? Amanda suddenly felt like the walls had shifted a few inches inward. She had always thought of Owen as passive, the kind of man who avoided confrontation, who played the long game because he didn't know any other game existed. Turns out she'd been right about one thing. He did play the long game. She just didn't know she was on the board. The digital history was the grenade. This letter, the pin, pulled quietly and mailed express. Amanda leaned back in the chair, the paper trembling between her fingers. He wasn't bluffing, he was building, and the walls were already cracking. She hadn't touched her laptop in 2 days. It sat there on the desk in the living room like a bomb he had left behind, with the timer still ticking. Amanda walked past it half a dozen times, pretending she had no reason to be afraid of it. But she did. After the letter, we already reviewed her digital history. She didn't sleep. She barely moved, just lay in bed as the sun shifted across the room like a silent metronome, ticking towards something she couldn't undo. By the afternoon of the second day, curiosity stopped being a temptation and became a compulsion. She opened the lid. The screen blinked awake. No password prompt. He removed it. That alone made her stomach twist. Owen was paranoid with passwords. Even their Netflix account had a 16-digit key phrase like Spring Tulip 1986 plus a dot. She clicked into the file browser. It opened directly to a folder titled For Amanda. The icon pulsed like it was mocking her. She opened it. Inside were 3 subfolders: messages, images, receipts. She stared at them for a long moment, her hand frozen on the trackpad. She clicked on Messages first. A series of screenshots, WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram, all of them time-stamped. The first one hit like a freight train. A message from Ben, the ex-boyfriend she'd reconnected with after running into him at her niece's wedding. She told Owen Ben was just a friendly face from college, that they had talked about life and aging and how hard marriage could be. Apparently, Owen had seen more than that. You ever think about what would have happened if you'd picked me instead? All the time, she'd replied. You're just a better man, Ben. I hate that I have to lie to myself about that. Her breath caught in her throat. She clicked the next one. He doesn't even notice anymore. I could sleep with you tomorrow and he'd think I was at Pilates. She clicked faster. Each screenshot was worse than the last. One message referenced the Marriott in Santa Clara, room 204, dated 2 years and 11 months ago. She remembered that day. She told Owen she was at a corporate training retreat. He'd kissed her forehead and packed her vitamin supplements in a plastic bag. She had slept with another man that night while Owen had texted her, "Hope the seminar is not too boring. Love you." Amanda covered her mouth like that could stop the nausea from rising. She backed out of the messages folder and opened images. There were only 5, but it was enough. Selfies she had sent Ben, some tasteful, some not. Her face was in 2 of them, her wedding ring visible in 1. The file names weren't random. They were dated and organized. He hadn't just found them. He'd curated them. She opened the final folder, Receipts. There it was. Marriott Santa Clara, room 204, $192.77. Charged to a burner card. Name, Marilyn Crest. The alias she had used once for a yoga retreat, thinking she was clever. How had he? She shut the laptop, stared at it. It was a coffin now, sealed, heavy, full of things she had buried and hoped no one would exhume. Amanda curled onto the couch, knees to chest. The weight of every small decision suddenly crashing down in perfect sequence. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse. He simply gathered, waited, prepared. She lived her life thinking she was smarter, that he'd never know, that even if he suspected, he'd never act. But Owen wasn't acting now. He was executing. And the worst part wasn't that he had all the proof. The worst part was that he didn't need her reaction. He'd already moved on. All that was left was letting her drown in it. Amanda didn't cry the next morning. She sat still at the kitchen table, fingers laced around a mug of coffee she hadn't touched. The steam had stopped rising hours ago. It just sat there, like her. She'd replayed every text, every photo, every receipt in that damn folder. She didn't even know when he would have found them. She never left her laptop unattended. Not really. Not during the bad years. She'd used VPNs, private browsers, deleted threads, changed aliases. She thought she'd covered it all, but Owen had outmaneuvered her, and not with fury, with foresight. So, she picked up her phone. If she could just speak to him, hear his voice, remind him that they had a life, that this couldn't just be surgical. Maybe there was still a version of this story where he was angry, yes, but reachable. She called the direct line to his office. Straight to voicemail. She hung up and dialed reception. "Hi, can I speak to Owen Cross?" The receptionist paused. "I'm sorry, Owen no longer works here." Amanda blinked. "Excuse me? He left the firm 2 weeks ago. Didn't he tell you?" Her mouth opened, closed. No, he didn't. Apologies. I thought you might have known. Have a good day." Click. She sat back in her chair, a pull suddenly loud in her neck. 2 weeks ago, that wasn't possible. 2 weeks ago, Owen had kissed her cheek goodnight. 2 weeks ago, he brought home dry cleaning from his office after working late. 2 weeks ago, she had rolled her eyes when he got a 7 a.m. call and muttered something about Q3 forecasts. Her stomach coiled. She grabbed her car keys. The drive was a blur, white lines and muscle memory. She barely noticed pulling into the parking garage. She marched across the glossy tile floor of the corporate building, trying to steel herself with some thin layer of dignity. But the second she stepped up to the front desk, she knew it was real. The same receptionist, young, polite, tight-lipped, looked up. "I'm sorry, I already mentioned Mr. Cross left the company. It was a quiet exit." "A quiet exit?" Amanda asked. Her voice cracked on the word quiet. "Yes, he'd been preparing it for a while, from what I understand." Amanda leaned forward. "Preparing?" The receptionist glanced around, then lowered her voice. He shut down his entire portfolio, off-boarded clients, transferred internal documents to a private server. Honestly, it was seamless, like he'd planned it months in advance. Amanda staggered back. Months. She stepped outside, barely feeling the sun. The sound of a delivery truck backing up jolted her into stillness. Owen hadn't just walked out after her joke. He was never in anymore. 2 weeks ago, he'd already started the exit. She'd been living with a ghost. What else did she not know? What was he doing now? Where was he working? Had he even told their financial advisor? She pulled out her phone again, called Greg, their guy at the bank. Voicemail. She tried Owen's brother Ethan. Also, voicemail. The world was pulling inward. Every line she'd drawn to Owen was vanishing behind locked doors and full inboxes. The man she thought she married, the man she thought she humiliated with that dinner party punchline, was 10 steps ahead. No, 20. He hadn't just left the office, he'd left the life. And she hadn't even noticed, the door closing behind him, because Amanda had been too busy laughing at her own joke to see the chessboard under her feet. No, she was just another pawn watching the king disappear. The week moved like wet cement. Amanda stopped pretending to function by the 3rd day. She canceled her brunch plans, let the mail pile up, showered twice, maybe 3 times. She barely touched food. The kitchen felt foreign now, his coffee mug missing from its usual hook. The knife block oddly shifted, like something had been removed. Even the fridge hummed differently, like it too knew what had been lost. Every attempt to reach Owen had failed. Calls straight to voicemail. Emails read. No reply. She even tried the old sentimental card, forwarding him a picture of their first apartment in Queens. The message bounced back. Recipient address not found. He'd erased her access, not just to him but to everything. Still, she held on to a fantasy that this was just about control, that Owen would reach a breaking point and need to talk, that the calm, calculating man she married couldn't possibly be this cold, this gone. That fantasy broke. On day 7, her phone rang. She snatched it up with such urgency she nearly dropped it. Ethan Cross, Owen's brother. He never called. They'd spoken maybe 6 times in 18 years, always about football or holiday plans, or how awkward Amanda made family dinners. She hesitated, then answered, "Ethan." Silence on the other end, just the sound of breath, a pause. "Then, you embarrassed a man who spent 18 years protecting your dignity." His voice was low even, but not calm. "And now you wonder where he went." Amanda opened her mouth, but the line had already gone dead. The weight of those words knocked the air from her lungs. Protecting your dignity, not his, yours. She sank down onto the floor, phone still clutched in her hand. The realization bled in slowly, like ink in water. Owen hadn't stayed all those years because he was weak. He wasn't passive. He wasn't quiet because he had nothing to say. He was deliberate. He let her take the spotlight, let her spin her little narratives, let her paint herself as the misunderstood wife of the boring husband. He stood beside her at parties while she cut him down with playful jabs. He smiled when she made snide remarks about his hobbies, his clothes, his routine. He never fought because he wasn't playing her game. He was building his own. And now, looking back, it was so obvious. He changed his password 6 months ago. New IT protocol, he said. He'd asked odd questions at dinner about her phone habits, whether she used iCloud, how long old messages stayed archived. He'd taken a sudden interest in estate planning, updated the trust, rewrote the will, transferred the house title. She signed it without reading because it was just paperwork. Owen wasn't reacting to her betrayal. He'd been preparing for it. Amanda sat motionless on the cold hardwood floor, her breathing shallow. The man she mocked for being too passive, too safe, too predictable, was none of those things. He'd simply been quiet long enough to ensure every domino was perfectly lined up. And now they were falling, one by one. No shouting, no accusations, just silence and precision. Amanda didn't fear what she had already seen. She feared what was still coming. Because if Owen could dismantle 18 years with a single week of silence, what else had he built while she wasn't looking? Amanda arrived at the bank wearing her best mask of composure. Pressed slacks, silk blouse, and the same burgundy lipstick Owen used to compliment. Not because she wanted to look good, but because she needed to look in control. That illusion cracked within minutes. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Cross," the banker said, sliding the monitor slightly so Amanda could see the account summary. "This joint account is currently under freeze, pending legal separation protocol." Amanda stared at the screen. Her heart hiccuped in her chest. Pending what? The banker, mid-30s, overgelled hair, a tie too cheerful for what he was about to say, tried to keep a neutral tone. "There's a freeze on all disbursements and transfers. It was initiated by your husband's legal counsel 4 days ago. Under the terms of the preliminary filing, both parties' access is suspended until the court confirms division." She blinked. "That's our money." He nodded sympathetically. "Correct. But it's an escrow now." Amanda's throat went dry. She reached for her phone inside her bag. "Okay," she muttered. "That's fine. I still have the Amex. And the banker cut in gently. "Actually, I should mention your shared credit accounts were closed 2 days ago. Both holders notified, charges reconciled, credit lines frozen until reassessment." Amanda's jaw locked. She opened her banking app. The Amex gone, Visa inactive. She scrolled fast, heat rising up her neck. She tapped into the savings account Owen had opened for emergency travel. Zeroed out. He drained it legally. She closed the app, stood. "I need to speak to someone from the fraud department." The banker didn't flinch. "It's not fraud, ma'am. Your husband followed the proper channels." Amanda didn't hear the rest. Her ears were ringing. By the time she reached her car in the parking lot, her hands were trembling. She sat behind the wheel for a full minute, staring at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her face looked thinner, older, like she hadn't slept in weeks, because she hadn't. She pressed the call button for her lawyer, Dan Whitman, someone she'd used twice before for tax issues and once for a neighbor dispute. She'd never needed him like this. He picked up after 2 rings. "Dan, I need to know. Can Owen do this? Freeze everything? Drain the emergency savings? Transfer the damn car title?" Dan hesitated. "Amanda, I've reviewed the early filings. Everything he's done so far falls within legal bounds if he prepared for this ahead of time." "Prepared?" she snapped. "You mean plotted? I mean documented. The savings account was in his name. The car was registered to him. He closed the cards as a primary holder. The account freeze followed court notification. It's airtight." Her mouth dried. She looked at the glove box. The car, her car. She opened the center console, dug through the registration papers with frantic fingers. There it was. Name, Owen Cross, not Amanda. He'd switched it quietly. Probably last time it was up for renewal. She'd signed something that day. He told her it was DMV junk. She never checked. Dan's voice returned, softer now. "He's good, Amanda. Not just smart. Prepared. This was surgical. You didn't notice because he didn't want you to." Amanda's lip trembled. "I didn't think he was capable of this." Dan sighed. "Neither did I when I first read it. But the trail goes back months, maybe longer. Honestly, it's like he was building an exit strategy while keeping the lights on for you." Amanda hung up without saying goodbye. She sat in the silence of her car, surrounded by the illusion of things she once thought she owned. A house not in her name, a vehicle she no longer controlled, accounts she couldn't touch. The life she built on Owen's steadiness was disintegrating in slow, deliberate folds. And now, all she had left was a phone with no one answering, and a seat in a war she never realized had started until he'd already won the first half. Amanda lit the candles herself, 2 at the center of the table, the tall kind, white, expensive, thin as excuses. She'd set out the nice cutlery, the ones they never used because Owen always joked they made the food taste like obligation. The wine was decanted, the playlist soft and curated. She even reheated the same mushroom risotto recipe Owen used to make on Friday nights. It smelled like nostalgia and desperation. 6 places, 3 couples. She paced the hallway as 6:30 crept past. She'd invited Julie and Dave, old friends from the gym, Peter and Lydia, who'd gone on a ski trip with them back in 18, and Greg and his husband Andrew, who knew both sides, but had always leaned more toward Amanda. She wasn't trying to salvage the marriage tonight. That ship had left port and burned the dock. She was trying to salvage her position, her standing. She needed to remind everyone that she was still Amanda Cross, the one who organized charity brunches, curated book club lists, remembered birthdays, the one who still mattered. The doorbell rang at 6:44. Julie and Dave. Julie air-kissed her cheek awkwardly. Dave muttered a flat, "Thanks for having us." He didn't meet her eyes. They sat stiffly on the couch as Amanda poured them wine. Lydia and Peter arrived 10 minutes later. No hugs, just nods. The sixth place stayed empty. Greg and Andrew never showed. Amanda texted, "Running late." No reply. She moved the empty place, setting into the kitchen, heart sinking as she pretended not to notice the silence in the living room. The conversations felt brittle. Julie talked about her son's braces. Lydia mentioned refinancing. Dave scrolled his phone more than he sipped his wine. Every time Amanda tried to steer things back to normal, funny anecdotes, gossip, even a harmless dig at the HOA, something about the table resisted. It was like a party held in a cemetery. The elephant in the room wasn't just present, it was wearing Owen's cologne. When Amanda brought out the food, she laughed a little too loud. "Hope you're hungry. I actually followed Owen's old risotto recipe. Remember the one he always insisted had to be stirred counterclockwise?" Nobody smiled. Julie cleared her throat and said, "Yeah, he made that for Lydia's birthday once." That was a good night. Amanda froze. That night had been her idea. She'd shopped, cooked the sides, even picked the damn flowers. But all anyone remembered was his risotto. As the meal stretched on, the gaps between words widened. Eventually, Peter stood. "We should head out. Early morning tomorrow." It wasn't even 8:30. Julie followed, grabbing her coat from the hook without Amanda offering. "We'll catch up soon," she said, but her voice was thin, like a postcard signed out of obligation. Amanda walked them to the door, offering each a goodbye hug that was returned with half-hearted arms. As the door clicked shut, she heard something, a whisper, a voice. It was Lydia. Just before the car door closed, she humiliated him. What did she expect? Amanda stood there for a long time, hands still resting on the doorframe. The scent of mushroom and thyme lingered in the air like the perfume of a ghost. She walked back into the dining room. Empty chairs, half-full wine glasses. The risotto untouched on one plate, already going cold. She sat down in Owen's old spot, stared at the plate across from her, and for the first time, really understood. This wasn't just about losing a husband. She was losing everyone. No one wanted to be in the blast radius because Owen hadn't just left. He elevated. He disappeared with grace. And now everyone was wondering how long they'd been wrong about him, about her. Amanda picked up her fork, took one bite of the risotto and dropped it. It tasted like ash and silence, and a table she no longer deserved to set. The conference room was colder than it needed to be. Not freezing, just sterile, like a surgical theater. Frosted glass, brushed steel handles, water bottles with labels she didn't recognize. Amanda sat across the table from Owen's attorney, Dana Whitlock, who looked like she'd been carved out of glacier and ambition. Her own lawyer, Dan, sat beside her, awkwardly paging through his leather folio like he was searching for a magic clause that would make this easier. No one was smiling. Dana opened her briefcase, removed a folder with Owen's name embossed in black on the tab, and slid it across the table with the same finality as a death certificate. "Your copy," she said, as discussed. Amanda didn't reach for it. She stared at it like it might explode. Dan nudged her gently. She opened the folder, 4 pages neatly printed. No margin for error. The house to be sold with, proceeds split 60-40, Owen's favor. No alimony, no spousal support, mutual asset liquidation. Joint possessions pre-distributed with listed documentation. Amanda to vacate the property within 45 days. It was clean, precise, cruel, in how reasonable it looked on paper. Dan cleared his throat. These terms are aggressive, but not without precedent. Amanda's hand trembled. 60-40? He's the one who left. Dana folded her hands, unbothered. He also funded the mortgage, paid off your law school debt, and documented all major household purchases in his name. The court will recognize the imbalance. He's not punishing you, Mrs. Cross. He's simply declining to subsidize you any longer. Amanda looked at her, stunned. Subsidize? Dana didn't blink. You had discretionary access to finances for nearly 2 decades. That's now ended. You're not being punished. You're being separated. Amanda's fingers curled into fists on the table. Dan leaned in, whispering, "You don't have to sign today." Amanda didn't answer. She stared at the line near the bottom, no alimony. For 18 years, she'd given up promotions to follow Owen's transfers, skipped her own career path for their daughter's PDA and Owen's networking dinners. She had made this life work, and now she was being handed an exit slip like an employee caught stealing staplers. She looked up, her voice shaking. "What if I refuse?" Dana didn't smile, but her eyes flickered. "Then we go public." Amanda's heart thudded. "What does that mean?" she asked, quieter now. Dana gently slid a second sealed envelope across the table. "We file discovery. Your full communications archive enters the record, screenshots, receipts, depositions from Mr. Wallace, Mr. Taylor, and if necessary, Mr. Benjamin Riker." Amanda's skin went cold. Ben Riker, he wasn't just an old fling. He was a partner at a firm that shared clients with Owen's company. Their affair, if dragged into court, wouldn't just destroy Amanda's image. It would burn bridges, professional ones, social ones, family ones. "I don't think that's necessary," Dan said quickly, eyes darting between the women. Amanda looked at Dana. "Is he doing this to humiliate me?" Dana cocked her head slightly. "No, if he wanted to humiliate you, this would already be on public record." Amanda looked down at the folder again. There were no insults inside. No venom, just a clean incision. Legal, bloodless, final. Owen didn't want revenge. He wanted freedom, and he'd already walked most of that road. This was just the toll gate. Amanda reached for the pen. Her hand shook as she signed the first page. The pen hovered over the second, and suddenly the room felt very, very small, because this wasn't just a legal meeting. It was a funeral, and she was the only one mourning. The cafe was too quiet. Not the usual kind of quiet. No gentle chatter, no clinking cups, just the low hum of an espresso machine in standby mode and the tick of a wall clock that seemed to grow louder the longer Amanda sat there. She wore a soft beige coat, makeup subtle, hair neat. The kind of presentation women default to when they don't want to look like they're trying but need to. She checked her phone again. 3:02 p.m. He was late, which was odd. Owen had never been late. Not once in 18 years. Not to birthdays, not to dental appointments. Not even to that soul-killing and law dinner she made him attend when he had the flu. She'd spent 2 full days working up to this. She wasn't coming to beg. Not exactly, just to talk, apologize, try to stitch together something resembling closure, or at least clarity. Because somewhere under all the damage, she still thought there might be a thread of the man who used to carry her across puddles like a corny movie cliché. The man who hand-labeled Tupperware before business trips so she'd never starve in sorrow. But at 3:07 the door opened, and it wasn't Owen. It was Dana Whitlock in the same glacial blazer as last time, tablet under her arm, no expression. Amanda's throat tightened. "Where's Owen?" Dana sat down calmly, not removing her coat. "He's not coming." Amanda blinked. "He agreed to this meeting." Dana nodded. "He agreed to let me deliver something." That was all. A pause. Amanda looked down at her hands. Her nails were manicured, French-tipped, shaking slightly. "This wasn't supposed to be this," she said softly. "We weren't toxic. We weren't like other couples." Dana tilted her head. "You're right, you weren't. Owen never screamed, never cheated, never controlled. He just adapted." Amanda bit her lip. "He used to look at me like I was the whole room," she whispered. Dana didn't respond. Amanda's eyes darted toward the window. A young couple walked by, laughing, sharing a milkshake. She could almost hear Owen's voice, teasing, "That's a $7 straw, you know. You better marry him now." "Is he happy?" she asked. Dana leaned forward. Not smug, not cruel, just final. Then quietly, 6 words. "He forgave you. He outgrew you." Amanda's mouth parted slightly, but no sound came. Her stomach dropped, not in pain, but in recognition, because for the first time, she understood. This wasn't revenge. Owen hadn't scorched earth. He just moved beyond it. She wasn't being punished. She was being left behind. And maybe that was worse. Dana stood, gathering her things. "The documents will be filed Monday. You'll receive final notice. By mail." Amanda didn't move, didn't respond. She just stared ahead through the window, beyond the people, the city, the light. The world outside was still spinning, but she was no longer tethered to it. Owen had evolved into a man who required no anger to say goodbye. And she, so clever, so sharp, so sure, had misread stillness for weakness. By the time she reached for her cold coffee, the seat across from her was already empty.